Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marion Phillips. Before I call the meeting to order, I will note for the record that I will be serving as acting chair for today's meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Queens West Development Corporation for Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow the members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 10 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the newest member of our board, Jonathan Glickman, from the Port Authority. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Mr. Glickman was appointed to fill a vacancy created when Andrew Lynn decided to retire. We will hold that against him. We have known each other since 93, so we're definitely upset with him. I would like to welcome you to the board and the work here at Queens West. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I'd like to ask the directors whether any of you has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item. Any conflicts?
No.
Hearing none. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the directors of March 14, 2018. This is item 1A in your book. I assume everyone's had a chance to review them. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Everything has been approved. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, no opposes. Thank you. So the motion carries. I'm going to ask Toby Jayasimi, the president, to present a request for authorization for the corporation to amend its contract with Fleming Lee Shoe to continue to provide environmental consulting services for the corporation. Toby, please begin with when you're ready.
Good afternoon, directors. As stated by Marion, you're being asked to approve and authorize the amendment of QUIDEC's contract with Fleming Lee Shoe. Fleming Lee Shoe has served as our environmental monitor since 2011. They came on initially to do the remediation work at the site at Parcel 8 and Center Boulevard, and then the scope of work has expanded to include monitoring and compliance work for us related to, DEC's edicts and requirements for the site. We've run into some issues with this contract over the last two amendments, partly because of, again, DEC's requirements of the corporation. So for the past 2 years, we've actually ran out of either time or money with this contract because there's a new scope of work that's been added. Back in 2012 and 2017, it was with the DNAPL well installations because there was some dense, non-aqueous petroleum liquid or whatever the acronym is specifically that was thought to be at the site after the necessary work was done and the testing has moved forward by Fleming Lee Shoe. There has been no presence of contamination at the site thus far, but DEC still requires that we continue the monitoring work, and that ran the corporation $96,000 actually. Frankly, it was about $105,000 because there was actual work that was done after that, but the well installation itself totaled about $96,000. That took a significant chunk out of what was the then approved budget for the contract, putting us in arrears with Fleming Lee Shoe. And now we're also in a unique position because we thought that we would move ahead with the prescribed scheduling for groundwater at both Central Boulevard and Parcel 8. I'll note that for Parcel 8, DDC is responsible for the groundwater sampling and the periodic review reports that are sent to DEC, but related to the DNAPL, Queens West is responsible. And so back in July, we received notice from the agency about requests for additional work and reporting that needed to be done, including the reinstallation of some wells that might have been damaged from previous work that was done. And right now, the estimate for that work is upwards of $200,000 for Parcel 8 and for Center Boulevard. And so we're really at a unique position with this contract. We've responded back to DEC and asked that they take another look at the requirements and the requests that they've made for us for monitoring at the site. But we want to be in a position to be able to get the required work done to be a good landlord at Queens West and make sure that the reporting and monitoring work moves ahead. But we also want to be able to pay Fleming Lee Shoe at a decent rate and make sure that we're not constantly delayed in getting payment to them. So I'm hoping that this increase and this contract amendment is able to meet all of those needs and allows for the corporation to do what's in the best interest for the site, but also to keep its responsibility and requirement for all of the state's remediation requirements as well.
Thank you, Toby. Just for clarification, this is an amendment to an older contract. Right. It's a vendor that we've had on site for a number of years, and the reason you're recommending, I assume, is because they are familiar with the work and they're familiar with the site, and they have been one who's been very responsive to date.
Right. So Fleming Lee Shoe not only did the remediation work, but also the installation of the wells that are currently at the site right now. So, they have just a very unique history with the project site. They've also done work for the developers at Queens West as well. So they really do have kind of like a unique perspective on the work that's being done. And outside of that, the initial remediation work that was done was because they had the sole proprietary use of a specific remediation method that was the most effective for the site at the time. But I'm happy to take any questions. The specific details of the contracts are listed in the materials. It would be for a 2-year term, not to exceed $500,000 per term. Again, that figure was arrived by reviewing the payments that were made to Fleming Lee Shoe in the last 3 years, estimating the cost of what may or may not be required of the agency from DEC, and then ensuring that we can cover the other required, quarterly monitoring samples or annual monitoring samples that need to be done.
Are some of this $500,000, some of it going to costs already incurred that were in the rears?
Right, but that would be cost from April 1, 2018 to present. But we were hoping that we put ourselves in a position where we won't be in arrears, again, looking forward.
Okay.
So it's work that was done after the contract expired?
Well, for the previous contract amendments, yes, because it wasn't that the contract expired, it was that the scope of what the services were for that contract at the time couldn't cover the cost of the DNAPL well installations, right? That the presence of the DNAPL material wasn't something that we'd anticipated to be found at the site, so it just wasn't included in what we anticipated to be charged for by Fleming Lee Shoe. And that was back, again, the payments were made in 2017, but by the time we, came to the end of the contract in 2018 and thought about moving ahead, the initial thought for staff was that we would actually put out a new bid for this contract and, see what else was possibly available out there. But for 2 reasons. One, because of Fleming Lee Shoe's history on the site, and also the requirements, the new request from DEC that would require that whatever work is being done is done with the institutional knowledge that Fleming Lee Shoe had. It was in the best interest of the corporation to move to amend the contract.
So the amendment is, if I understand what Jonathan, I believe, is getting to, is the purpose is to, due to the scope changing as part of the amendment.
Well, not for this current amendment, but for previous amendment and cost. So, like I stated earlier, we've been put in a position where we've either ran out of time, which happened more recently, or we ran out of money, which happened for the previous amendment. If you recall, Jonathan, you were not on the board at the time, but there was the last contract amendment that was done in 2017 was to use a contingency on the contract to cover outstanding costs that came out as a result of these DNAPL well installations. And so that was us running out of money. Now it's us running out of time and needing to amend the contract. Is that clear? If not,
And this might be more of a question of just because I don't really know about the chemistry process, chemical process, but I guess I'm just curious. It says the wells were originally put in at Fleming Lee Shoe. Why were they taken out?
They weren't taken out. Some were damaged in the course
Oh, I
of
see.
other construction work that wasn't done by Fleming Lee Shore, by Queens West.
Yeah,
we have them.
that damage was the responsibility of the New York City Department of Design and Construction on Parcel 8, and they have paid for the reinstallation of those damaged wells. And just so that everyone understands, because I know we are so used to dealing with this stuff, we throw around these acronyms all the time. But what Toby's talking about was the discovery in a few of the wells, a small percentage of them, of dense non-aqueous phase liquid. That's what she calls DNAPL. And that is DEC was concerned that might be the result of material, deep material that had not been remediated when the first remediation was done 5 or 6 years ago. We're very confident that that's not the case, and we do expect that DEC will finally say that we're done with the testing and further remediation, because they have recently done that further north at Queens West in the area where the Rockrose buildings are, parcels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're not doing any more testing up there now because DEC has become content that the remediation work is done. So hopefully you don't get another one of these in another year or so, and we'll finally be able to wrap it up. I should just say for the record that, of course, all of this was done under the Brownfields program or the voluntary cleanup program, and we do have covenants not to sue for further remediation under both of those programs.
Simon, just tell us who you are for the record, since your back is turned to the stenographer.
Sorry?
Tell us who you are.
Oh, who am I? I don't know. Who am I today? Yes, Simon Wynn, ESD Legal, and I've been ESD's, the Queens West's project attorney for the last 10 years.
Thank you. Comments, questions, directors?
You haven't bid it, but what it says is you're benchmarking their costs against other contractors that ESD
Yeah,
has
so
used with other
what
projects.
I did was I took a look at, ESD has a pre-qual list of environmental monitors and consultants, and I took a look at the services that those firms offered, and the cost that they would charge for their services compared to what Fleming Lee Shoe's charges are, and found that Fleming Lee Shoe actually, in terms of financial offerings, gave a good deal for the corporation. And then I also compared it with the city's environmental monitor that's on site as well, that's doing work at Queens West, and found the rates to be beneficial to the corporation.
Okay.
I'll note that Fleming Lee Shoe's rates haven't increased actually in the last 2 amendments, so there hasn't been an increase in cost. The only unique positions has been the new work that needs to be done in response to requests from DEC.
Okay. So our hope is there's 2 new wells that are being installed or being reinstalled with that as part of this.
Well, we don't know the exact number of wells yet because the corporation responded to DEC saying, please, reevaluate,
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't heard from them.
We haven't heard from them. Please reevaluate and please give more substance to your request for us, because the letters both for Parcel 8 and Center Boulevard were just like, do this and have a plan within 30 days. And, that really would have put the corporation in, it's just an undue burden on the corporation, especially as Simon has stated, with the testing that's been done at this site, we haven't found, evidence that would cause concern. And so we're hoping that once we do hear back from DEC, this contract amendment allows for us to be responsive and for Fleming Lee Shoe to be paid to do the work. We my initial thought was to, again, bid it out, but we're back at being comfortable with holding Fleming Lee Shoe as our monitor just because of their experience and expertise with the site and the work that they've done in other former brownfield site as well successfully.
Okay. And with the pursuing the ability not to have to do the ongoing testing.
Or not to have to
Definitely.
like do ongoing testing, but also reinstall wells that haven't needed to be tested for a number of years because those sites just have not proven to be an area of concern.
Just have two clarifications.
Sure.
So what is the current amount outstanding that would need to be handled by this new contract?
The current amount that's outstanding is minimal. It's actually probably under 15,000.
Oh, okay.
To tell you the truth, I would estimate between 15 and 30,000 just to be safe. The math that I did is somewhere here in the red, actually, because I actually sat down and calculated each invoice and number. I can give you an exact number after the meeting, but it's well below what the current contract amendment amount is for. The reason why the number is 500,000 for 2 years is taking into consideration whatever the cost would be for the reinstallation of the wells should
they be needed?
And again, just because we have the 500,000 doesn't mean we're going to issue Fleming Lee Shoe this check for $500,000. If the work isn't needed and if it's not required of us, then the money won't be taken out of the corporation's account.
It's just easier, as you all know, to plan opposed to
Right.
emergency.
Yeah.
Right, and
And
to have
that's
to
what
be
we're doing.
responsive, and again, not to have to go back to being in a position where we have outstanding funds due to the firm.
Okay, thank you. And just the other question is, so also this scope does not involve anything that's the DDC's responsibility for
No,
parcel 8?
it is not. We have a contract, an agreement with the city of New York about what their requirements are for Parcel 8, and we are regularly copied on whatever the transmissions are between DDC and DEC as relates to Parcel 8. So if there is an area where the agency is delinquent, which they haven't, we will be kept abreast of that.
The wells that we're talking about either reworking if needed or continuing to be sampled are all not within the footprint of the library,
Right.
Okay, thank you.
which is DDC's responsibility.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm just wondering if you could see the library out that window, but no,
It's on. Yeah, it's like.
it's just slightly catty corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep telling them to do the meeting on the east side. You never do it. So, no other comments. Comments from the public? There are none. May I have a motion to approve the amendment?
So moved.
So moved and second, please? Second. All in favor? Opposed? As the motion carries, I believe that is all we have on our agenda today. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved, seconded. I assume all of us want to go back on the subway to our offices. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Antonio.